Hi, welcome to the quiz. You can answer along on quizalto.com, all for free. The exact URL of this quiz will be in the notes down below. Let's get started, good luck. Which of the following accurately describes how AWS IoT Events charges for its service? Based on the total storage used for historical data. Based on the number of actions triggered by events. Based on the number of messages evaluated and detector model instances. Based on the number of IoT devices connected. AWS IoT Events pricing is primarily based on the number of messages evaluated and the number of detector model instances in your account. This usage-based pricing model allows costs to scale with your actual utilization of the service. What AWS service can be integrated with AWS IoT Events to trigger serverless functions in response to detected events? AWS API Gateway, AWS SQS, AWS RDS, AWS Lambda. AWS Lambda is commonly integrated with AWS IoT Events to execute serverless functions in response to events detected by detector models. Which AWS IoT Events component is responsible for defining the logic for event detection and response? Input. Detector model. Alarm. Action. In AWS IoT Events, the detector model defines the logic for event detection and response. It specifies the states of your equipment or process, and defines which events trigger transitions between states and what actions to take when entering or exiting each state. What is the primary function of states in AWS IoT Events? To manage device firmware updates. To categorize types of IoT devices. To represent conditions during event processing. To visualize historical IoT data. States in AWS IoT Events represent different conditions that a detector model can be in during event processing, guiding the flow of actions based on the current state of event inputs. How does AWS IoT Events help in reducing operational costs for IoT applications? By eliminating the need for IoT device certifications. By offering discounts on AWS IoT services. By providing unlimited free tier usage. By automating event detection and response tasks. AWS IoT Events reduces operational costs for IoT applications by automating event detection and response tasks, thereby optimizing resource utilization and improving overall efficiency. How does AWS IoT Events integrate with AWS IoT core rules? IoT Events completely replaces the need for IoT core rules. IoT core rules can send data directly to IoT Events inputs. IoT Events detector models are created automatically from IoT core rules. IoT core rules are used to visualize the output of IoT events. AWS IoT Events integrates with AWS IoT core rules by allowing IoT core rules to send data directly to IoT Events inputs. This enables seamless data flow from IoT devices connected via IoT core to the event detection and response mechanisms in IoT events. In AWS IoT Events, how are clear timer actions typically used? To reset the AWS IoT Events service to its initial state. To erase all historical data associated with a detector model. To remove all scheduled maintenance tasks for IoT devices. To stop and clear a previously set timer. Clear timer actions in AWS IoT Events are typically used to stop and clear a previously set timer. This can be useful when a certain condition is met before the timer expires, or when transitioning to a state where the timer is no longer relevant, preventing unnecessary timer-based actions. What is the primary purpose of inputs in AWS IoT Events? To provide contextual data for event processing. To manage IoT device lifecycle. To monitor network bandwidth. To authenticate IoT devices. Inputs in AWS IoT events are used to provide contextual data associated with events, which is crucial for determining the appropriate actions or responses. What is the main advantage of using AWS IoT events over building a custom event detection system? It includes pre-built detector models for all types of IoT devices. It offers unlimited storage for all historical IoT data. It eliminates the need for any custom coding or configuration. It provides a managed service with built-in scalability and integration with other AWS services. The main advantage of using AWS IoT events is that it's a fully managed service with built-in scalability and seamless integration with other AWS services. This reduces the complexity and overhead of building and maintaining a custom event detection system, while still allowing for customization to meet specific needs. How does AWS IoT events ensure data durability? By replicating detector model states across multiple availability zones. By creating physical backups of all IoT devices. By storing all input data indefinitely in Amazon S3. By limiting the number of state transitions to prevent data loss. AWS IoT Events ensures data durability by replicating detector model states across multiple availability zones within a region. This distributed approach helps maintain the current state of your detectors even in the event of infrastructure failures, providing high availability and resilience. Which of the following is not a valid state in an AWS IoT Events detector model? Transition. Degraded. Normal. Alarm. In AWS IoT events, valid states in a detector model represent the condition of your equipment or process, such as normal, degraded, or alarm. Transition is not a valid state, it refers to the movement between states based on events. What does event detection rate refer to in AWS IoT events? The total number of IoT devices connected. The speed at which events are processed. The frequency of alarms triggered. The cost of AWS IoT services. Event detection rate in AWS IoT events refers to the speed at which the system can process incoming events, indicating its ability to detect and respond to events in real time based on defined rules and conditions. What is the role of actions in AWS IoT events? To authenticate IoT devices. To manage device firmware updates. To visualize historical IoT data. To perform tasks based on detected events. Actions in AWS IoT events are tasks performed automatically based on detected events, such as sending notifications or executing Lambda functions in response to specific event conditions. What is the purpose of start conditions in AWS IoT events? To define initial states for detector models. To visualize real-time IoT data. To schedule periodic data collection. To authenticate IoT devices. Start conditions in AWS IoT events are used to define initial states or entry points for detector models, determining how event processing begins based on predefined criteria or triggers. What is the primary purpose of AWS IoT events in the context of IoT device management? To provision and authenticate IoT devices. To detect and respond to events from IoT devices and sensors. To visualize IoT device data in real-time dashboards. To store large volumes of IoT device data. AWS IoT Events is designed to detect and respond to events from IoT devices and sensors by monitoring their data, recognizing specific event patterns, and triggering actions when these events occur. What is the purpose of the Batchput Message API in AWS IoT Events? To update the content of existing messages in bulk. To retrieve messages from a specific detector model instance. To send messages to an input to be evaluated against detector models. To delete multiple messages from an input simultaneously. The Batchput Message API in AWS IoT Events is used to send messages to an input. These messages are then evaluated against the detector models associated with that input, potentially triggering state changes or actions based on the defined event patterns. Which of the following is a key benefit of using AWS IoT Events for industrial equipment monitoring? Early detection of potential issues before they cause downtime. Physical security monitoring of the industrial facility. Real-time video streaming of equipment performance. Automatic repair of faulty equipment without human intervention. A key benefit of using AWS IoT Events for industrial equipment monitoring is the early detection of potential issues before they lead to downtime. By continuously monitoring equipment data and detecting patterns that indicate degraded performance or impending failures, AWS IoT Events can trigger alerts or actions, allowing for proactive maintenance. What role does the AWS IoT Events console play in managing detector models? It automatically optimizes detector models based on machine learning algorithms. It simulates IoT devices to generate test data for detector models. It physically deploys detector models to edge computing devices. It provides a graphical interface for creating, testing, and debugging detector models. The AWS IoT Events console provides a graphical user interface that allows you to create, test, and debug your detector models. It offers tools to visualize the model's states and transitions, simulate inputs, and verify that the model behaves as expected before deploying it in a production environment. Which of the following is a valid use case for AWS IoT Events in a smart home context? Detecting and responding to a sequence of events indicating a potential water leak. Streaming live video from security cameras to homeowners' devices. Ordering replacement parts automatically when appliances malfunction. Adjusting the home's architectural design based on occupant behavior. A valid use case for AWS IoT Events in a smart home context is detecting and responding to a sequence of events that might indicate a potential issue, such as a water leak. For example, it could monitor signals from moisture sensors, water flow meters, and pressure sensors, and trigger alerts or shut off the main water valve if a concerning pattern is detected. Which AWS IoT Events feature allows you to test your detector model without sending real device data? Detector Model Simulator. Virtual IoT Device Generator. Synthetic Data Injector. Model Stress Tester. The Detector Model Simulator in AWS IoT Events allows you to test your detector model without sending real device data. It enables you to create test scenarios, simulate inputs, and verify that your model transitions between states and triggers actions as expected. What role does input attribute mapping play in AWS IoT Events? To visualize real-time IoT data. To categorize types of IoT devices. To manage device firmware updates. To translate event data into actionable insights. Input attribute mapping in AWS IoT Events is used to transform and map incoming event data attributes into a format that detector models can process, facilitating accurate event detection and response. What is the purpose of the timer feature in AWS IoT Events? To calculate the total uptime of the AWS IoT Events service. To measure the battery life of IoT devices. To schedule automatic software updates for IoT devices. To track the amount of time spent in a particular state. The timer feature in AWS IoT Events is used to track the amount of time spent in a particular state. It can help trigger actions or state transitions based on how long a condition has persisted, which is useful for monitoring and responding to time-sensitive events. How does AWS IoT Events support scalability for IoT applications? By providing dedicated IoT hardware. By automatically adjusting resources based on workload demands. By reducing IoT device power consumption. By offering specialized IoT developer tools. AWS IoT Events supports scalability for IoT applications by automatically adjusting computing resources based on workload demands, ensuring consistent performance and reliability as application usage grows. What is the function of the reset action in an AWS IoT Events detector model? To return a detector model instance to its initial state. To re-evaluate all past messages against the current model. To clear all input data associated with a detector model. To restart the entire AWS IoT Events service. The reset action in an AWS IoT Events detector model is used to return a specific detector model instance to its initial state. This can be useful when you want to restart the event detection process for a particular device or system, clearing any accumulated state information. What is the advantage of using detector model logging in AWS IoT Events? To track historical events and debugging. To visualize real-time IoT data. To schedule periodic data collection. To categorize types of IoT devices. Detector model logging in AWS IoT Events helps track historical events and aids in debugging event processing logic, providing insights into how events are detected and actions are triggered within the system. And that's a wrap. Thanks to everyone who participated. Remember, you can answer along on quizalto.com, where you can keep track of your progress and find much more quizzes. We hope you had a fun and challenging time. Until next time. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more. Hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as we upload. Please leave a comment if you have any thoughts or suggestions, and, if you think this video is worth sharing with someone who could benefit from it, please forward a link to them. See you next time. Thanks for watching.